I sat at the glossy mahogany table of my family's annual reunion dinner, watching my sister Olivia hold court. As usual, she commanded everyone's attention, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The crystal chandeliers of the country club's private dining room cast a warm glow over the gathering, but I felt cold inside. And then, Olivia gestured dramatically with her wine glass. The CEO personally thanked me for saving the Anderson account, promoted me on the spot to Senior Vice President of Client Relations. She paused for effect, soaking in the admiring gasps from our assembled relatives. I took another sip of water, fighting the urge to check my phone. The messaging app was probably exploding with updates about tomorrow's major executive interviews at Horizon Enterprises. As founder and CEO, I should be reviewing candidates, but family obligations came first, even if my family had no idea who I really was. Speaking of careers, my mother's voice cut through my thoughts. "Sophia dear, are you still doing that? What was it again? Freelance work?" The way she said freelance made it sound like I was selling magazine subscriptions door to door. If only she knew that my freelance work was a cover for running one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. "Yes, Mom, still freelancing." I kept my voice neutral, remembering the stack of acquisition paperwork waiting on my desk. Tomorrow would be interesting, to say the least. Olivia's perfectly manicured hand reached across the table to pat mine in mock sympathy. "Oh, Sophia, still haven't found your path? You know, there might be an entry-level position opening up in my department. I could put in a good word." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. The entry-level position she was talking about was at Maxwell Communications, the company Horizon Enterprises was about to acquire. The same company where Olivia had her coveted senior VP role. The same company where she'd be interviewing tomorrow. "At my company." "That's so kind of you." I managed my voice steady. "But I'm comfortable where I am." My father shook his head, not bothering to hide his disappointment. "Sophia, you had such potential. Top of your class at Harvard Business School. Offers from all the major consulting firms. And now look at you, 32 and still finding yourself while your sister is breaking glass ceilings." The irony was almost too much. Last month, Forbes had named me one of the 40 under 40 most influential business leaders. The article had used my preferred press photo, one where I was turned away from the camera, my face obscured. Very few people knew what the reclusive founder of Horizon Enterprises looked like. It was exactly how I wanted it. "Remember when we were kids?" Olivia's voice dripped with false nostalgia. "You always said you'd run your own company someday. How's that dream working out?" "Better than you could possibly imagine," I thought. My Aunt Eleanor jumped in, ever helpful. "You know, I have a friend who runs a small bookkeeping service. Maybe she could use some help with data entry." "Thanks, Aunt Eleanor." I pushed my barely touched dessert aside. "But I'm doing fine." "Fine?" Olivia scoffed. "Sophia, you live in a tiny apartment, drive a used car, and from what I can tell, barely make ends meet. Meanwhile, I just closed the biggest deal in Maxwell's history. The merger announcement is tomorrow. It's going to transform the company." If she only knew. The merger she was so proud of was actually a carefully orchestrated takeover. Maxwell Communications had been struggling for years, hemorrhaging money and losing market share. My team at Horizon had been quietly buying up shares through various shell companies for months. Tomorrow's announcement wouldn't be about a merger, it would be about an acquisition. And Olivia's biggest deal was actually negotiated by her assistant, while she took credit for the work. I knew because I'd seen all the paperwork, watched all the meetings through video calls where no one knew who I really was. "That's wonderful, Olivia," I said quietly. "I'm sure tomorrow will be quite transformative." She missed my meaning completely, raising her glass in a self-congratulatory toast. To success. Something some of us will never understand. Our mother beamed at her while our father nodded approvingly. The perfect daughter with the perfect career, the family success story. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably another update about tomorrow's interviews. I'd insisted on personally meeting all Maxwell's senior executives to determine who would stay after the acquisition. Olivia's interview was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. "Excuse me," I said, standing up. "I need to take this call." "Oh, honey," my mother sighed. "Don't tell me you're still doing those late-night customer service jobs." I stepped away from the table, finding a quiet corner of the country club's elegant hallway. My assistant's text confirmed everything was set for tomorrow. The conference room was prepared, security was briefed, and all the paperwork was in order. Looking back at my family through the dining room's open doors, I allowed myself a small smile. They had no idea that the family failure they dismissed for so long was about to turn their world upside down. Tomorrow, Olivia would walk into Horizon Enterprises headquarters expecting to discuss her role in the merger. Instead, she'd come face to face with the truth. Her little sister, the supposed failure, was actually her new boss. I checked my watch. 14 hours until the meeting. 14 hours until everything changed. Returning to the table, I found Olivia still holding court, regaling everyone with stories of her corporate triumphs. "You know," she said as I sat down, "success is about seizing opportunities. Some people just don't have what it takes." "You're absolutely right," I replied, allowing myself a cryptic smile. "Tomorrow's going to be very interesting." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, finally considering my offer for that entry-level position." "Something like that." I raised my water glass. "To new beginnings." The crystal chandeliers continued to sparkle overhead, casting shadows that danced across the table like secrets waiting to be revealed. In less than a day, my family would learn that success comes in many forms, and sometimes the quietest person in the room is actually the most powerful. As I drove home that night, leaving behind the echoes of Olivia's condescending laughter and my parents' thinly veiled disappointment, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Tomorrow would change everything, not just for my family, but for the hundreds of employees at Maxwell Communications who deserve better leadership than they'd had. I parked my old car, actually a carefully chosen vintage Porsche, in the garage of my tiny apartment, the penthouse of the city's most exclusive building, and prepared for what would likely be a sleepless night. The papers spread across my desk told the story my family had never bothered to learn: how I'd built Horizon Enterprises from the ground up, turning it into a technology and communications powerhouse while maintaining my anonymity. Tomorrow, the mask would finally come off. Tomorrow, they'd learn that the daughter they dismissed as a failure had quietly built an empire. I wondered if Olivia had picked out her power suit yet for the interview. I wondered if she'd practiced her signature "I'm the most qualified person in the room" smile. I wondered how that smile would fade when she realized who really held the power. But mostly, I wondered if after everything, they'd finally understand that success isn't about appearances or titles or bragging rights at family reunions. Sometimes it's about quietly building something extraordinary while everyone else is too busy showing off to notice. The next morning, I stood in my private elevator at Horizon Enterprises headquarters, watching the city wake up through the glass walls. My reflection showed someone very different from the failure my family knew. A woman in a perfectly tailored Armani suit, radiating quiet confidence. "Good morning, Ms. Chen," my executive assistant Marcus greeted me as I stepped onto the top floor. "The Maxwell Communications executives are waiting in the main conference room. Your sister arrived 15 minutes early." Of course she did. Olivia always had to be first, had to appear the most eager, the most prepared. "How many times has she mentioned her senior VP title?" I asked, unable to resist. Marcus checked his tablet, lips twitching. 7 times in the first 10 minutes. She also made sure everyone knew about the Anderson account. I smoothed my jacket, checking my appearance one final time in the brushed steel walls. "And our security team?" "In position. All phones and recording devices have been collected, as per standard protocol for acquisition meetings. The official paperwork is ready." I nodded, taking a deep breath. Let's not keep them waiting any longer. The main conference room at Horizon was designed to impress, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of the city skyline. As I approached, I could hear Olivia's voice through the partially open door. "Really, it's quite remarkable how quickly I've risen through the ranks," she was saying. "Natural leadership ability, I suppose. I'm sure whoever runs Horizon will recognize that immediately." I pushed open the door. The room fell silent. Olivia, halfway through what was undoubtedly another self-congratulatory speech, froze mid-gesture. Her perfect composure cracked as confusion, then disbelief washed over her face. "Sophia," she stammered. "What? What are you doing here?" I walked calmly to the head of the table, setting my briefcase down with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the stunned silence. "Good morning, everyone. I apologize for the delay. Shall we begin?" I kept my voice professional, nodding to Marcus, who began distributing folders to the assembled executives. There must be some mistake, Olivia interrupted, her voice rising. This is a private meeting. We're here to meet with Horizon's CEO about the merger. Yes, you are. I sat down, opening my own copy of the acquisition agreement. Sophia Chen, founder and CEO of Horizon Enterprises. Now about that merger. The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia had gone pale, her designer dress suddenly seeming like a child's costume. The other Maxwell executives were frantically flipping through their folders, their earlier dismissive attitudes evaporating as they realized who I was. This is impossible, Olivia finally managed. You're just a freelancer. You live in a tiny apartment. That apartment is the penthouse of the Archer building, which Horizon owns, I corrected her calmly. As for being just a freelancer, sometimes, Olivia, success doesn't need to be announced at every family dinner. I stood up, clicking through presentation slides that detailed exactly how Horizon had systematically acquired controlling interest in Maxwell Communications over the past year. Let me be clear about what's happening here. This isn't a merger, it's an acquisition. Horizon Enterprises now owns 51% of Maxwell's shares, purchased through various subsidiary companies over the past 12 months. Olivia's face had shifted from shock to anger. You did this deliberately. You let me sit there last night bragging about the merger while I knew that your biggest deal was actually negotiated by your assistant? I raised an eyebrow. Yes, I did. Just like I've known about the Anderson account, how you took credit for your team's work while spending most of your time at charity luncheons. The other executives shifted uncomfortably. They'd all known the truth about Olivia's leadership style, but no one had dared to speak up. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I continued, Maxwell Communications is a subsidiary of Horizon Enterprises. We'll be implementing immediate changes in the executive structure. Olivia stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. You can't do this. I'm Senior Vice President of Client Relations. I've built relationships, made connections. Your position is being eliminated. I cut in smoothly, along with several other redundant executive roles. However, I turned to address the rest of the room. Most employees below the executive level will be retained. Horizon believes in recognizing actual talent and hard work. The next hour was a blur of signatures, legal requirements, and shocked silences. One by one, the Maxwell executives filed out, leaving me alone with my sister. Olivia stood by the window, her perfect composure completely shattered. Why? She whispered. Why didn't you ever tell us? I gathered my papers slowly, considering my answer. Would you have believed me? When have you ever believed I could accomplish anything significant? She turned to face me, tears smearing her expensive mascara. All these years, at every family dinner, every holiday. Every time you mocked my career choices, every time you offered me an entry-level position as if you were doing me a favor. I closed my briefcase with a decisive click. Consider this a lesson in humility, Olivia. Success isn't about who can brag the loudest at family reunions. Mom and Dad, she started. We'll find out soon enough. The press release goes out at noon. As if on cue, my phone buzzed, my parents' number flashing on the screen. Olivia's phone had probably been blowing up too, once it was returned to her after the meeting. I answered on speaker. Hello, Mom. Sophia. Her voice was shrill with disbelief. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you haven't been lying to us all these years. I never lied, I replied calmly. You just never asked the right questions. You were too busy celebrating Olivia's achievements to notice mine. But all those times we offered to help you find a real job. I was building a billion-dollar company. I allowed myself a small smile. Though I admit, watching Olivia offer me entry-level positions at a company I was about to acquire, that was rather entertaining. The line went silent for a long moment. Finally, my father's voice came through, heavy with something that sounded like regret. Why keep it a secret for so long? I looked at Olivia, still standing shell-shocked by the window, then back at the phone. Because I wanted to succeed on my own terms. Not for family approval, not for bragging rights at reunions, but for myself. After ending the call, I gathered my things to leave. At the door, I paused and turned back to Olivia. Oh, and about that entry-level position you offered last night, I think you might be needing it yourself soon. Feel free to submit your resume to HR. The next family reunion was different. Gone were the condescending comments about my career choices. Instead, relatives who had once dismissed me as a failure now hung on my every word. Olivia was notably absent. She'd taken a job at a smaller firm, reportedly showing a new appreciation for humility and hard work. My parents struggled to reconcile their image of their unsuccessful daughter with the powerful CEO I'd become. They alternated between excessive pride and obvious discomfort, especially when friends asked why they'd never mentioned their daughter ran Horizon Enterprises. As for me, I finally moved into a bigger office, one with my name on the building. Sometimes, when I work late, I can see my old tiny apartment from my window. It reminds me that success isn't always visible on the surface, and the quietest person in the room might just be the most powerful. The biggest change, though, wasn't in how others saw me. It was in how I saw myself. I no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. My success wasn't about showing up my family or getting revenge. It was about building something meaningful, something that would last. Now when people ask about my path to success, I tell them the truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above. And sometimes the person everyone underestimates turns out to be the one they should have feared all along. The cream-colored wedding invitation sat on my kitchen counter like an elegant insult. Bold foil lettering announced the union of Madison Elizabeth Collins and James Harrison Sterling II at the Plaza Hotel. My sister's dream wedding to a man she called the perfect catch, a rising star at one of the country's largest investment firms. I, Emma Wilson, wasn't supposed to be just a guest. I was meant to be the maid of honor. At least that was the plan until yesterday. "Emma, we need to talk about your appearance at the wedding," Madison had said over lunch at her favorite overpriced bistro. She picked at her salad, not quite meeting my eyes. I glanced down at my outfit, simple black slacks and a navy blazer. Professional, understated, comfortable. What about it? Well, she sighed dramatically. James's family is very particular about these things. His mother is on the board of the Metropolitan Museum. His sister was just featured in Vogue. We need everything to be perfect. I knew where this was heading. Madison had always been embarrassed by my preference for simplicity. While she chased designer labels and social status, I focused on building something meaningful, even if nobody knew about it. "The bridesmaids' dresses are Vera Wang," she continued, "and everyone will be wearing Louboutins. Your usual choices, they just won't fit in." "Madison, I can buy a new dress. It's not just the dress," she burst out, her perfect makeup creasing with frustration. "It's everything. Your sensible shoes, your plain jewelry, that ancient car you insist on driving. You look like a small-town librarian, not a Collins." I touched the simple pearl necklace at my throat, our grandmother's last gift to me. "I like how I dress." "That's the problem." Madison threw her hands up. "You don't care about appearances at all. Do you know how it looks when people ask what my sister does, and I have to tell them you work at some tiny financial advisory firm?" I bit back a smile. My tiny firm was actually Wilson Global Investments, one of the most powerful private equity companies in the world. But Madison didn't know that. Nobody in my family did. "I saw the guest list," I said quietly. "James's boss is coming. Edward Sterling from Sterling Corp." Madison beamed. "Yes, Edward is James' uncle. The whole Sterling family will be there. That's why everything has to be perfect. Their connections could change our lives." If only she knew. Edward Sterling was actually my newest board member. I'd acquired his company 6 months ago in a friendly takeover, though the press still hadn't discovered who was behind the deal. "Madison, I tried one more time. I promise I won't embarrass you." She reached across the table, patting my hand with practiced condescension. "Oh, sweetie, you can't help it. You are who you are. That's why." She took a deep breath. "I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding." The bistro's ambient noise faded to a dull hum. "You're uninviting me from your wedding." "Don't be dramatic. I'm just trying to protect the family's image. James is going places, Emma. This wedding could open so many doors for all of us. I can't risk anything going wrong." I stared at my sister, this person who shared my blood but had somehow become a stranger. All because of how I dress? "It's not just that," she insisted. "It's what you represent. Everyone else has made something of themselves. Look at me, I'm marrying into the Sterling family. Even mom and dad have their country club status. But you, she shook her head, you're just so ordinary. The irony almost made me laugh. That morning, I closed a $2 billion deal from my phone while getting coffee. My net worth was higher than the entire Sterling family combined. But to Madison, I was an embarrassment because I didn't flaunt it. I see, I said, standing up. Well, I wouldn't want to tarnish your perfect day. Don't be like that, Madison pouted. You can still send a gift. Something nice. You must have some savings, right? I left without answering, my mind already turning over possibilities. For years, I kept my success private, building my empire in peaceful anonymity. But maybe it was time for a change. Back in my penthouse office, the one my family thought was a small financial advisory firm, I picked up my phone. Sarah, connect me with James Sterling, please. My assistant's voice was professional, but I could hear her smile. James Sterling, aita, or Senior? Junior. And Sarah? Don't announce me, just put me through as a potential client. A moment later, James's eager voice filled the line. James Sterling speaking. How can I help you today? Mr. Sterling, I'm calling about a rather significant investment opportunity. My firm is considering a substantial position in Morgan Stanley's new tech fund. Excellent. I could practically hear him sitting up straighter. May I ask which firm you're with? Wilson Global. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. Wilson. Global? As in, Chairman Wilson's firm. The same. I had no idea they were considering. I mean, we'd be honored to. Would it be possible to set up a meeting? With the chairman? I smiled, thinking of Madison's dismissive words. Actually, I'd like to discuss this in person. Are you free tomorrow morning? The chairman will be in your office at 10 a.m. James stammered his agreement, probably already imagining the commissions from such a massive account. If he only knew he was talking to his future sister-in-law. After hanging up, I walked to my private dressing room, the size of Madison's entire apartment, and surveyed my collection of designer suits. For years, I'd saved these for overseas business meetings, preferring simpler clothes in my daily life. Sarah, I called out, cancel my morning meetings tomorrow, and send me the latest report on Sterling Corp's Asia expansion. I think it's time for Chairman Wilson to make a formal appearance. That night, as I stood in my penthouse overlooking the city, I thought about choices. Madison had chosen appearances over substance, status over sincerity. I'd chosen to build something real, something that would last beyond trending fashions and social climbing. Tomorrow, both our choices would collide in a way she never saw coming. And her perfect wedding? Well, that was about to become a lot more interesting. The next morning, I stood in my private dressing room, transforming myself from Emma, the embarrassing sister, into Chairman Wilson, one of the most powerful figures in global finance. The Armani suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, cost more than Madison's entire wedding dress. The Bowden heels, a Cartier watch, and grandmother's pearls completed the ensemble. The car is ready, Ms. Wilson, Sarah announced from the doorway, and Mr. Sterling has already called twice to confirm the meeting. I smiled at my reflection. How's his anxiety level? Through the roof. Apparently, he's had the office redecorated overnight and ordered in fresh flowers. His assistant says he hasn't slept. And my sister called him 4 times this morning. She's upset he's postponing their wedding venue tour for an anonymous client meeting. Perfect. The drive to Sterling Investment Group's offices took exactly 23 minutes. My driver, Thomas, pulled up to the curb precisely at 9:57 a.m. As I stepped out, I noticed the entire executive team waiting in the lobby, James standing front and center, practically vibrating with nervous energy. Chairman Wilson, he rushed forward, then stopped short, his face draining of color as recognition hit him. Emma? But you? What? Good morning, Mr. Sterling, I said calmly, enjoying the way his eyes darted between my face and my obviously expensive attire. Shall we discuss that investment opportunity? Behind him, I could see his Uncle Edward trying and failing to hide his amusement. He kept my identity secret when I acquired Sterling Corp, understanding my desire for privacy. But you're Madison's sister, James stammered, the one who works at a small advisory firm. A common misconception, I replied, walking past him toward the elevator, one that I've never bothered to correct. Now, about Morgan Stanley's tech fund. The next hour was almost comedic. James alternated between trying to maintain his professional demeanor and casting terrified glances at me, probably remembering every condescending comment he'd made about my simple lifestyle at family dinners. "These projections," I said, pointing to his carefully prepared presentation, "they're optimistic." Yes. Well, he tugged at his collar. "We believe the Asian market shows signs of volatility that your models don't account for," I finished. "Perhaps we should discuss the real reason I'm here." James swallowed hard. The real reason? The wedding. He sank into his chair. "Madison doesn't know, does she? About who you really are?" "No, she doesn't. Just like she doesn't know that your family's company now works for me, or that your Uncle Edward reports to my board." "Oh God," he whispered. Back in my office, I stared at the wedding invitation again. My phone had been buzzing nonstop, messages from Madison, James, even our parents, who had presumably heard the news. "Sarah," I called out, "what's my schedule like next month around the wedding date?" "You have that conference in Milan," she replied. "The one where they're announcing you as Businesswoman of the Year." "Perfect," said Madison a note. "Tell her I won't be able to attend because I have a prior commitment. Add that I've made a donation to her favorite charity in lieu of a gift." "How much?" I thought about all the times Madison had made me feel small, all the years of condescension and judgment. $10 million. Anonymously, of course. Let her spend the rest of her life wondering if every major donation comes from her embarrassing sister. That evening, I changed back into my usual simple clothes and drove my unfashionable Tesla to my favorite small restaurant. The owner, Maria, greeted me warmly, not caring what I wore or who I was. My phone buzzed again, Madison calling for the 20th time. I sent it to voicemail and ordered my usual pasta. "Bad day?" Maria asked, noticing my distraction. "Interesting one," I replied. Sometimes people forget that true value isn't about designer labels or social status. Sometimes it's about being exactly who you are, even when others can't see your worth. "Wise words," she smiled. "More wine?" "Yesterday," I continued, "my sister uninvited me from her wedding because I wasn't sophisticated enough for the Sterling family, because my presence might embarrass her in front of her new social circle." "Emma, I had no idea she—" "Of course you did," I cut him off. "You were there last Christmas when she mocked my car. You laughed when she called my clothes clearance rack chic. You even joined in, suggesting I should invest in my appearance if I wanted to be taken seriously." The blood drained from his face. "I didn't mean. The interesting thing about appearance," I said, standing up, "is how deceiving it can be. For instance, I appear to be sitting here considering an investment in your fund. In reality, I'm deciding whether to accelerate the restructuring of Sterling Corp's Asian division." Restructuring? Currently scheduled for next quarter. Though as chairman, I could move it up. Perhaps even announce it before, say, a certain high-profile wedding. Just then, the door burst open. Madison stormed in, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. "James, what is going on? I've been trying to reach you all morning." "We have appointments, Toe." She froze, seeing me. "Emma? What are you doing here? And what are you wearing?" I turned slowly, enjoying the way her eyes widened as she took in my transformation. "Hello, Madison. James and I were just discussing business." "Business?" She looked between us, confusion evident. "What business could you possibly have with James?" Actually, James's voice cracked. "Emma is Chairman Wilson," Edward Sterling said from the doorway, making everyone jump. "The board is ready for you. Shall we discuss the Asia strategy?" Madison's perfectly glossed lips fell open. "Chairman Wilson?" "Yes," I smiled. "Though you might know me better as your embarrassing little sister." But that's impossible," she sputtered. "You work at that tiny firm." "Wilson Global Investments," I corrected her. "Founded by me 8 years ago. Current market value, $43 billion. Though the press still hasn't figured out who Chairman Wilson really is, I prefer to let my work speak for itself." Madison sank into the nearest chair, her designer dress wrinkling. All this time, I've built something real while you chased appearances. And now you've uninvited me from your wedding because I'm not good enough for the Sterling family. I turned to James. Though technically, the Sterling family works for me. Emma. Madison's voice wavered. I didn't know. Clearly, you were too busy judging the cover to read the book. I gathered my papers, tucking them into my Hermes briefcase, another item I usually kept hidden. James, have your team revise those projections. I want to see real numbers, not just what you think will impress the board. Yes, Chairman, he mumbled. And Madison? I paused at the door. About the wedding. Don't worry, I won't embarrass you by attending, but you might want to rethink the venue. I just bought the Plaza Hotel this morning. Apparently, they're closing for renovations next month. Such unfortunate timing. I left them there, Madison's soft crying following me down the hall. Edward fell into step beside me. That was rather theatrical, he observed. Sometimes a lesson needs to be dramatic to be learned. And the Plaza? Did you really buy it? I smiled. No, but they think I did, and sometimes appearance is everything. Isn't that what my sister always says? Back in my office, I stared at the wedding invitation again. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. Messages from Madison, James, even our parents, who had presumably heard the news. Sarah. I called out. What's my schedule like next month, around the wedding date? You have that conference in Milan, she replied. The one where they're announcing you as Businesswoman of the Year. Perfect. Send Madison a note. Tell her I won't be able to attend because I have a prior commitment. Add that I've made a donation to her favorite charity in lieu of a gift. How much? I thought about all the times Madison had made me feel small, all the years of condescension and judgment. $10 million. Anonymously, of course. Let her spend the rest of her life wondering if every major donation comes from her embarrassing sister. That evening, I changed back into my usual simple clothes and drove my unfashionable Tesla to my favorite small restaurant. The owner, Maria, greeted me warmly, not caring what I wore or who I was. My phone buzzed again, Madison calling for the 20th time. I sent it to voicemail and ordered my usual pasta. Bad day? Maria asked, noticing my distraction. Interesting one, I replied. Sometimes people forget that true value isn't about designer labels or social status. Sometimes it's about being exactly who you are, even when others can't see your worth. Wise words, she smiled. More wine? Please. I thought about Madison, probably still reeling from the revelation. About James, desperately revising his projections. About my parents, who would soon discover that their underachieving daughter was actually the business genius they'd always wanted. But mostly, I thought about myself, about the choice I made years ago to build something meaningful rather than chase appearances. Madison's wedding would go on, though perhaps at a different venue. She'd marry into the Sterling family, though with a very different power dynamic than she'd imagined. And me? I'd go back to running my empire, quietly changing the world without needing anyone's approval. Sarah texted me, your sister just sent an email. She's officially re-inviting you to the wedding. Says she's sorry and hopes you'll reconsider attending. I typed back, send her the Milan conference schedule. And Sarah, book me a suite at the Plaza for next week. I think it's time Chairman Wilson made a few more public appearances. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right all along. Madison wanted a perfect wedding. Instead, she got a perfect lesson in judgment and worth. And me, I got something better than revenge. I got to be exactly who I am, without apology or pretense. Sometimes that's the greatest success of all. As I finished my wine, I made a mental note to buy this restaurant, not to change it or make it trendy, but to preserve it exactly as it was. A reminder that true value doesn't always wear designer labels. I straightened my tie, checking one last time that my presentation materials were perfect. Tonight's family dinner at my sister Rebecca's mansion was more than just a gathering. It was my chance to finally prove myself. After years of working in silence, making strategic investments through my company Griffin Capital, I was ready to pitch my biggest venture yet. I just needed backing from Monarch Bank, where my brother-in-law, Marcus Williams, served as executive vice president. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, Marcus had been the one to deny my first business loan, calling my ideas childish fantasies. Now he paraded around at every family function, reminding everyone how he'd saved my sister from her struggling family by marrying her. James, Rebecca greeted me at the door, air kissing my cheek. My little sister had changed since marrying into the Williams banking dynasty. The warm girl who used to defend me against schoolyard bullies was now more interested in social climbing than family loyalty. "You're looking professional," she said, eyeing my off-the-rack suit with barely concealed disappointment. "Marcus just got back from Milan. Wait till you see his new Italian suits." The dining room was a monument to new money trying to look old. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, and what I suspected were reproduction paintings pretending to be originals. Marcus sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. "James, the small business genius graces us with his presence," Marcus called out, drawing laughs from the other guests, all bank executives and their wives. "Still running that little investment firm of yours? What was it called?" "Pigeon Capital." "Griffin Capital," I corrected quietly, setting up my laptop. "And actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. I have a proposal." "Oh God, not another one of your proposals," Marcus groaned dramatically. "Remember his last idea, honey? What was it? Affordable housing developments? As if anyone wants to invest in that." Rebecca giggled nervously. "James, maybe this isn't the right time. The proposal is solid," I pressed on. "A $2 billion development project. Sustainable housing, commercial spaces, community facilities. All we need is financing from Monarch Bank." Marcus nearly choked on his wine. $2 billion? Have you lost your mind?" He started laughing, and others joined in. "You can barely afford that suit, and you want to play with billions." "The numbers work," I insisted, pulling up my presentation. "If you just look. Enough." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "You want to know why you'll never succeed? Because you don't understand how this world works. Real business isn't about helping people or building communities. It's about power. And you, dear brother-in-law, have none." He stood up, straightening his Italian suit. "Tomorrow morning, I'm presenting to Monarch Bank's board about our latest acquisition. Real business, big business, something you'll never understand. So stick to your small dreams, James. It's all you're good for." As forced laughter filled the room, my phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. "Documents confirmed. Transfer complete. You now own 51% of Monarch Bank's shares. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Ready to meet your new employees?" I looked up at Marcus, still laughing at his own joke, and allowed myself a small smile. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. I arrived at Monarch Bank's headquarters at 8:45 a.m., wearing the same off-the-rack suit from last night. The security guard did a double take when I walked in. He was used to turning me away from Marcus's floor. "Mr. Griffin?" My lawyer, Sarah Chen, waited by the elevators. "Everything's in place. The board members have arrived early, eager to hear about Marcus's big announcement." She smiled. "They don't know there's been a slight change in the agenda. The last decade had been a careful chess game. While Marcus and his banking elite mocked my small investments, I've been quietly building an empire through Griffin Capital. Shell companies, silent partnerships, strategic acquisitions, all leading to this moment. The struggling companies I helped rebuild now formed a network of loyal allies, and their combined resources had allowed me to execute the ultimate takeover." "Does anyone suspect?" I asked as we rode to the top floor. "No, the share acquisitions were completely compartmentalized. Each shell company appeared independent. Even our insider sources say Marcus is confident about today's meeting. He's planning to announce Monarch's takeover of Rivera Banking Group." I smiled. Rivera Banking Group, another company I secretly controlled. The boardroom was impressive. All mahogany and marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marcus stood at the head of the table, that same smug smile from last night plastered on his face. "James, what are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting." Actually, Sarah stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. "Mr. Griffin has every right to be here." "What is this?" Marcus grabbed the papers, his face reddening as he read. "Ownership documents," I said calmly, taking a seat. "As of 8 a.m. this morning, Griffin Capital holds 51% of Monarch Bank's shares." The room erupted in chaos. Board members grabbed copies of the documents, whispering frantically. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. "Impossible. We would have known if someone was buying up shares." would you? I pulled up a presentation on the boardroom screen. A web of companies and acquisitions, all leading back to Griffin Capital. You were too busy looking down on small businesses to notice them uniting under one banner. My banner. This is a trick, Marcus sputtered. The Williams family has controlled this bank for generations. Until you started making risky investments and alienating smaller clients, I countered. Did you think those clients had nowhere else to go? They came to me, Marcus. All those small dreams you mocked, they added up. The board members were nodding now, seeing the full picture. Marcus had been bleeding the bank with his aggressive expansion plans, while I'd been building a sustainable network of loyal customers and solid investments. You can't do this, he whispered. Rebecca. She's your sister. Yes, she is. And maybe now she'll remember what that means. I stood up, straightening my off-the-rack suit. By the way, your Rivera Banking Group takeover announcement? That won't be necessary. They already answer to me. The boardroom doors opened and Rebecca burst in, her face streaked with tears. Marcus, what's happening? Why is our account frozen? About that, I turned to my sister. We need to discuss some irregularities in Marcus's personal trading accounts. Significant irregularities. Marcus collapsed into his chair, his Italian suit suddenly looking like the costume it always was. All those years, he breathed. You were playing us. No, Marcus. I was just doing business, real business, something you never understood. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of audits, meetings, and revelations. What started as a takeover quickly turned into a scandal as our forensic accountants uncovered years of Marcus's financial misconduct. Unauthorized trades, inflated assets, and personal expenses disguised as business costs. The prestigious Williams banking dynasty was built on a foundation of sand. I sat in my new office, formerly Marcus's, reviewing the latest audit reports when Rebecca stormed in. How could you do this to us? She demanded, slamming her hands on my desk. Do you know what people are saying? Our friends won't even take my calls. Your friends? I looked up at my sister. Or your husband's friends? What's the difference? Marcus gave me everything. A perfect life, status, respect. Respect? I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Let me show you something. I pulled up security footage from last month's board meeting. Watch how your husband treated his employees, the ones who weren't important enough. Rebecca's face fell as she watched Marcus berating a junior analyst, mocking an elderly board member, dismissing valid concerns about predatory lending practices. This was your perfect life? I asked softly, standing silently while he bullied people, just like you stood silently at that dinner when he humiliated me. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. After he helped pay for Mom's medical bills. I pay for those bills, I interrupted. Through one of my shell companies, Marcus just took the credit. Check your records. Rebecca sank into a chair, her designer handbag sliding to the floor. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? The brother with small dreams. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Griffin? The FBI agents are here about Mr. Williams's trading violations. Rebecca's head snapped up. FBI. James, please. He's still my husband. And you're still my sister. I sat beside her. That's why I've arranged for immunity in exchange for his cooperation. He'll face penalties and fines, but no jail time. The Williams family legacy might be over, but you won't have to see your husband in handcuffs. Why? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Why show mercy after everything he did? I handed her a framed photo I kept in my desk, us as kids, her standing up to bullies who were picking on her nerdy big brother. Because a long time ago, someone taught me that real strength isn't about having power. It's about how you use it. As Rebecca broke down crying, my phone buzzed with a message from the board. Marcus had agreed to resign. His last act would be to sign over his remaining shares. The Williams banking dynasty was officially over, but maybe, just maybe, the Griffin siblings could start healing. 1 year later, the sign on the building read Griffin and Partners Financial Group, a merger of Monarch Bank with my other companies. The marble and mahogany remained, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Junior employees no longer flinched when executives walked by, and the boardroom hosted regular meetings with small business owners and community leaders. I was reviewing a microlending proposal when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Marcus. He looked different, humbler in his department store suit, the arrogance gone from his stance. The immunity deal had saved him from prison, but his reputation in banking was finished. Most of his so-called friends had abandoned him the moment his empire crumbled. James, he nodded, standing awkwardly by the door. I came to sign the final paperwork. The divorce settlement. Rebecca told me, I replied, gesturing for him to sit. She said you're moving to Chicago. Small consulting firm. Very small. He attempted a weak smile. Ironic, right? All those dreams I mocked, turns out they weren't so small after all. No, they weren't. He placed a folder on my desk, the last of his Monarch Bank shares being transferred as part of the divorce settlement. You know what the worst part is? He said quietly, not losing the money or the status. It's realizing that I had a chance to be part of something meaningful. Your vision for ethical banking, community development. I could have been your ally instead of your enemy. Yes, you could have. Rebecca's happier now, he admitted. I see it when we meet with the lawyers. She's found her voice again. Started that children's charity she always talked about. The one you said was a waste of time. He winced. I deserve that. And a lot more. He stood up, straightening his modest tie. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the dinner or the loans, but for everything. You were the better man, James. You always were. After he left, I walked through the office floors, watching my employees. Our employees, at work. The analyst Marcus had berated was now heading our community outreach program. The elderly board members' concerns about ethical banking had become our core philosophy. Rebecca's charity occupied the entire 10th floor, providing support for underprivileged children. My sister had found her purpose again, separate from designer labels and social climbing. Sometimes during lunch, we'd sit in my office and laugh about old times, slowly rebuilding the bond we'd lost. That evening, as I prepared for a board meeting, my assistant brought in a loan application. Small bakery downtown. Owner says she met you 10 years ago. I smiled, recognizing the name. It was the same woman who'd given me free coffee when I was struggling to build Griffin Capital, believing in my small dreams when everyone else scoffed. On the application, I wrote, approved, with compliments from the small dream believer. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about proving them wrong by creating something they never thought possible. Marcus had been right about one thing. Business was about power. But he never understood that the greatest power lies not in what you can take from others, but in what you can help them build.